Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is Sprinklebeard. Today we are going to evaluate the epic. And we are specifically doing Ai. Ai is going to be a very good contrast champion to the Wrath that we did in episode 1. The reason that I picked Ai is that Ai is actually a very low rated champion in majority of the content. So I feel like going on to her as a number 2 will really showcase how different awakening stones can be used, or how different skill dust can be used, and us trying to use her to great effect will also be wildly different than how Wrath got used. So with that being said, let's get started. What is her job in this game? So specifically, Ai is a trapper and a controller. What this means is you want to be able to set the stage for your enemies to come to her. She is not a reactionary champion. She is a heavily proactive champion. If you do not place her in front of problems before they occur, Ai is going to feel very weak compared to what Wrath is. Wrath consistently attacked the one square in front of him. Here's her base zonage, and then as we promote her up, we can see that base zonage expands outwards, just like Vortex's healing, or certain characters like Setram and Brunor, who get very long ranges to their attacks and like their area of control. With this being said, she has an attack stat much closer to what an average epic is going to expect. So Wrath had that high attack stat of 4,600. Now we're down to 3,600. This is still slightly higher than average, but yes, it's a lot less. Her HP is much more in line with what we expect from epic stats, and she's at 8,449, whereas Wrath was at like 21,000. But again, Wrath is down in the thick of things. Her magic resistance is a bit better, so that is a huge advantage. Her cost is 19, so she is where we are getting closer to the, I would say, the high end of cost. For the sakes of these videos, we're going to say that between 19 and 22, because those are heavily used numbers in this game, we're going to consider them a high cost champion. I use the finger quotes because I don't personally consider that too high or too difficult. However, there's certain levels that is going to matter a lot, where you're going to need something cheaper cost, and I do want to say she's definitely not cheap to get out. She's definitely in that middle. We're going to ignore her block because she is a platform champion. She's not blocking or stopping anybody. However, the traps that she puts out, they will do a great job. Her attack interval is in the slowest category in the game. It's at 5 seconds. What this means is, yes, she would typically benefit more from attack speed bonuses. However, it doesn't matter how fast she attacks because her traps take time to set up. So with that being said, yes, there's a small advantage to giving her attack speed, but because all of her damage comes from those traps, I would encourage you ignore attack speed 100% on her. Just focus on pure raw damage. So attack percentage, crit rate, crit damage, and then flat attack will make her feel the most powerful that she can be. So what is her job in this game? She is a controller. So what she does is she will throw out these seeds, and they are random. So if we look at her area of coverage here, she will pick a random square. So this means that when you place her out, you have to know what areas she's going to be controlling, and even in the worst case scenario, will her trap arm in time before the enemy comes from that direction, which can make her quite difficult to use. Not impossible, but definitely a little bit of a higher skill cap than majority of champions in this game. With this being said, even though her attack range is random, she will plant seeds everywhere. She will fill up every single one of these squares if she can. So if there's other platforms, she cannot place a trap on top of a platform. So she's a platform champion. Anywhere else that you can place your champions, she cannot place a seed on. Her seeds do not affect flying enemies, so that is a gigantic weakness that she has. And lastly, if there is a ground unit already occupying that space, specifically a friendly ground unit, so let's say we summon out Wrath directly in the square in front of her, because that is where a path is, Wrath will stop her from ever placing a bomb there. A bomb cannot occupy the same spot as like a defender or a fighter that you have on the ground level. So again, she has some giant restrictions to her. That being said, we can then look at what giant advantages does she have for having such glaring weaknesses. So her skill set, she is a magic attacker, summons one ice seed on the ground. The ice seed transforms into a crystal bomb after a period of time, and I will be showing this off. What is a crystal bomb? Explodes when enemies pass by, so when an enemy touches it, it's a proximity mine. Deals magic damage equal to 200% attack and freezing them for 1.5 seconds. I emphasize this 200% damage because majority of the champions, even the legendaries, are hitting between 100% to like 120 on their basic attack. And then some of them that attack faster are hitting twice at like 70 to 85%, which yes means that they're getting up to that 180, but understand those two hits are both being mitigated by the armor, by the damage reduction, right? This 200% base damage means that her crits are going to be much, much higher than your average champion. That means she is going to feel a lot better with crit damage on her than your average champion. So next, her passive is her Frost Bomb. Like, it's literally the Crystal Bomb. So performing a summon on a Crystal Bomb enhances it, stacking it up to 2 times. After the first enhancement, Crystal Bomb deals magic damage equal to 350% attack and inflicts freeze. After the second enhancement, Crystal Bomb deals AoE damage equal to 520% attack and inflicts freeze, forming a zone that slows enemies for 3 seconds. So, a lot going on here, and this scales up as we give her dust, right? So there's 4 enhancements here. So damage after first enhancement plus 20%, damage after second enhancement plus 40%. So this will scale up. Let's look at the high end of things, right? I guess we should consider both. So plus 20 plus 40, this would be plus 40 collectively, plus 80, plus 60, plus 120, plus 100 and, I'm sorry, plus 90 and 160, right? So these damage values get obscene really fast. She gets to the point where she's just doing an absolute metric ton of damage and freezes the enemies, which just makes them super vulnerable to any units you have in that area. Her ultimate is Frost Bombs. When activated, every attack immediately summons a Crystal Bomb. So instead of her summoning out a seed that has to grow into a bomb, no, this is just straight up, she just starts tossing bombs out and placing them on the map, which is fantastic. It is also auto, so that means that she'll just be doing this on her own, which can be kind of great that she can kind of be this set and forget champion that you don't have to pay attention after you summon her. You do want somebody to take high advantage of her freezing though. Even though she does plenty of damage, you definitely want somebody over there to be doing constant damage, not the burst damage that she does. As we skill her up, she gets a reduced cost to her ultimate, which is fantastic. And then the duration in which her thing lasts goes from 15 seconds, scaling up to 25 seconds. Let's look at her awakenings next. Increases the damage of her crystal bombs by 50%. So her base was 200. This scales them up to 250%. That is absolutely amazing. There's another champion that we'll be talking about named Nasalt, who his basic attack scales up to 240%. he hits like a freight train. It's absolute. If you like big numbers, this can be a character that will throw out some really big numbers. And I will show off some of those big numbers here in just a moment. Here, if we awaken her further, she gets an additional 5% onto her attack. Awakening 3. The explosion caused by crystal bombs affects 2 additional targets when it is not enhanced or is only enhanced 1 time. So this lets you kind of make her into an AoE champion instead of a single target damage dealer. When I show her off, I'm going to show her off in like some of the promotion raids. I would not use her on the majority of levels where you have loads of enemies. She's definitely better on the less enemies on the map concept. In Arena, there's a hilarious gimmick thing that you can do with her, which I'll take the loss. I'll show it off just because it's awesome. Yeah. Rage Regen, this lets her get to her auto more frequently. Obviously, that's useful. Admittedly, this I would say is kind of the weakest one where it is very meaningful and you will absolutely notice it. However, again, her proactiveness, right? You want to get her into a position much earlier than your enemies get out. Now, when she does get into her ultimate, she's just throwing out those bombs. If she throws a bomb onto a square inhabited by the enemy will just cause that bomb to auto-detonate. However, if it's in its seed form, it does have to grow and blossom into a bomb before it will detonate. So that is something to keep in mind for her abilities. Lastly, her Awakening 5. Freeze effect on all crystal bombs is increased by 1 second. Understand that when you freeze an enemy, they are just frozen solid. They can't move. They just stand there doing nothing. So the longer that they're standing there doing nothing, the more your consistent DPS can be putting pounds and pounds of damage into the enemy. This also means that she can then place another bomb on that same square. So if you pair her with somebody, we're going to say Theowen, somebody who has a slow in their kit, you could essentially trap an enemy over and over again between the slow and the freezes to like being confined to like just 2 squares of movement depending on circumstances. But let's go show her off so that you guys get to see where she can be strong at. So what level is she best in? She can be okay in the campaign, and I say that she can be okay. Some of the campaign levels can be very quick where her high cost will make her a small detriment, and then because you want to use her proactively, it means that even if you summon her out as your very first champion, depending on the RNG of her to plant a seed in the path of that first enemy, it's not necessarily reliable. However, the longer a level goes on, the more Eye shines tenfold. So if you can get into a position with either a defender or a low-cost piercer to buy Eye enough time, she will put in a lot of work into a lot of the campaign levels. I will say, though, I would not bring her to a lot of boss battles. I have not personally tried it, but a lot of the bosses in this game tend to not move too much, or they summon swarms of enemies. And yes, if Eye turns out to be your favorite champion, you could probably one-shot a lot of those enemies. But when it swarms, that is definitely where she's a bit weaker. In the raids, so we have another champion that is not good in the marksman because they can fly. The enemies in this level can just fly over your crystal seed bombs. However, in the mages, the endurance, and the melee, what is great. So melee, in the first half of melee, you have a platform that you can put her on, and she can be tossing out those seed bombs to help you stall for time, or get some of your fighters into position, or slow things down from everything just bombarding your fighters. I don't think that is her best place, so I will say melee, I'd give her maybe a 5 out of 10. Yes, you could use her. I don't think she would be the best for that. But for things like endurance and mages, there are times where you have plenty of time. Endurance does have some faster enemies. What's great about her is that if she has the trap up, it will one-shot that enemy. Equally said, though, if her trap goes onto the wrong square, you could probably get burned by using Eye a whole lot. So again, I would say she's very usable in the endurance runs. Again, have a backup plan first. Have her be the additional trap, not the main trap, if that makes sense. For mages, though, this is a place where I can show her off quite well. And specifically, I have given her my best gear in the game only because I want to show off that this is meant to be a champion spotlight, if you will, of, hey, can this champion be very good? And the answer is yes, she can be fantastic. We are going to summon her down here on the bottom. The reason why is that the top side is just going to have too many enemies up there for me to reliably kill on her own. Here's also an example of we can force her to place seeds in a certain alignment. I just realized I don't have anything to take care of the top side. This will be fun. So here we can see that the seeds are forming, and as the enemies go walking into them, that's one crystal against a heavily armored enemy, and it's dealing 44,000.
Silence. Alone.
Notice that she's level 40. I don't think I even promoted her to rank 5 yet. I want to stress that she is doing 40-some thousand damage to a heavily armored enemy. Now, this is what her goal is. It is to take out these big, heavily armored, bulky dudes. That is her job in this. We're going to hope that these 2 piercers up top are enough for me to get this kind of done. So the one thing is here as well, her ultimate did go off, but because all the bombs were already placed, her ultimate was just kind of wasted. That is going to happen. It's kind of just like Nasalt, where how he has to spend time summoning up or doing his alchemy to form his orbs. You have a champion that you do have to have the prep time for. But just like Nasalt, and we will get to Nasalt at some point, this shows that the longer that these bombs have to... I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had the speed on so slow. The longer that we have as a prep time for her to arm these traps, and here we can see that she's starting to enhance these to be that AoE damage. So the longer time that she has to prepare, bam, 134,000 damage. Huge, huge numbers. This is where I absolutely shines. When you have time to prep like this, things will just literally walk into the bombs that she's placing, and they will blow themselves up in a ridiculous fashion. Up here, though, we can see that because of how fast the mobs are, this is where I would have a bit of a weakness that would be difficult for her to shine in. I think Novus can handle that bottom. Yeah, I have his skills up high enough that he should be fine.
The Ice Wolf stalks.
So here's the randomness that we were talking about. This is where she will definitely have a harder time. This is where you will want to pair a defender or a fighter back here. And especially your fighters that have the increased range are going to make her look super amazing. Because as she's placing all these bombs, their increased range from your fighter will be able to take advantage of the freeze effects that she's placing out.
My blades are always ready.
128,000. Just absolutely monstrous damage because her base damage is that 200%. I want to stress, I do not have her fully dusted up. I do not have her fully awakened, so these damage numbers could get a lot higher, especially the more time that she has to make these crystal bombs even bigger. I've had a lot of people tell me that they don't like her or they find her unusable. That same thing has been said about an Assault here, the Alchemist. I want to challenge players that in the campaign, once you get to campaign 9, these two champions shine tremendously because their base damages are a lot higher, but also the enemies take a lot longer to get across the whole battlefield. So her planting these traps and then being able to enhance them further so that they have those spikes coming off of them makes them shine that much more. The biggest issue that you have with her is getting her into this position where she has time to enhance them and to make them bigger. And as we can see, if the enemy swarms through, this is where she does have a giant shortcoming. Even with her immense crazy damage, unfortunately, if an enemy procs them before they're 100% armed, right, that enhanced version, enemies can just walk through her minefield. But as you saw, she absolutely does do plenty of damage, and for the bigger the enemy, the better she is.
We will strike again.
Sprinkles. So that was our promotion raid. Guild Boss, do not use her in Guild Boss. I would say she gets a 0 out of 10 on Guild Boss. I'm not actually sure she can even interact with the Guild Boss. I know I've tested it. Unfortunately, I have 0 tries, so I can't do that in this video. But yeah, I wouldn't imagine that she would be great here. Artifact Material Raid, I would say if you don't need the healer. So if you were using other healing means, so if you had champions like Wrath, Salazar, Muriel, champions that can heal themselves or heal others, I could see you using her in the Artifact Material Raid to help limit things getting around. However, as a boss killer, no, she's not going to feel amazing there. And on the boss as well, I would imagine you would want the sustained DPS is a lot more valuable. And this is where her proactiveness would not be as useful. I'm sure you could make an argument that yes, she's valuable there. I don't foresee it. I would say use at your own risk, 5 out of 10. If I was your first champion that you wanted to make 6-star, if you just absolutely loved her and loved her style, you know, yes, when she's 6-star, try using her in there. I would argue though you need the healer. So and once you get down to 1 platform, I would say I wouldn't bother with her. The Tide she is usable in. However, it's kind of that same thing. You have swarms of enemies, which is kind of Ai's biggest weakness. Now, if she has time to prep the bombs so that they do that AoE explosion, she's a bit better. Again, though, I don't think that this is the best place for her to shine, so I would discourage it. I would say like 4 out of 10. Still very usable, but not the best. What's great, though, is that you do have that prep time for her to be throwing out the crystals and setting up the explosions. And you know that the enemies have to go running through that minefield. So there is a big advantage to it. The same thing can be said for the resource raid here. So again, we're going to try to show this off, and this time we're going to do it the appropriate way. So yeah, this is her at 4-star with good gear on. And that is going to be a constant in this video, is showing off the champions with the best gear that they can have on.
The Ice Wolf stalks her prey.
Keep calm and howl on.
So I'm going to have Deimos here in the back just as a safety catch because I definitely don't want enemies running through everything. And again, this is a giant weakness that Ai has, is that enemies are going to be able to just run through. The more things are a swarm of enemies, the weaker Ai is going to be. However, if that AoE explosion just went off, she has time to enhance the crystal seeds as they mature. You will get to the point where some of these explosions do get pretty crazy. And again, as long as I don't summon anything here in front of her, so I'm going to summon him here intentionally. But this is an example of she will never place a bomb right where he is. Now, if I had somebody like Valkyra, who has that increased attack range, she could be taking huge advantage of things being frozen as they run through. Or if I want things to run into other bombs that she has planted, I can be putting them on the sides. But again, since this is a swarming battle, this is where I is definitely not going to feel her strongest. Even with some of the best gear on, she's putting out her damage. It doesn't matter. There's just too many enemies, and they are fast moving enemies, which is definitely a giant weakness that she has. Gear raids, where can she be useful at? So again, Gear Raid 3 is out of the question for her. Again, this is all flying enemies. Her bombs cannot interact with flying enemies. Ergo, do not use her here. This is where, though, Gear Raid 2, she's absolutely phenomenal in. And in Gear Raid 1, I would actually even argue that since you know that the enemies are going... we'll do 18. We'll show this off.
I shall be waiting to collect their souls.
I need the eye.
Who calls for the tundra's ink?
So this is not going to be the best showing for her because, again, this is a very swarmy stage that's about to happen. However, I do want to show off that we know everything is going to funnel into this space here. So if I wanted to, I could have summoned my 2 fighters back here first so that she can't place an ice crystal back in these 2 slots. Because if there is an ice crystal, you typically can't summon a champion there.
Ready or not, this is war.
I do not think that this would be the best stage for her because, again, we just have these enemies come swarming in and we need a way to clear out the enemies quickly and efficiently. With that being said, though, as you can see, she could be prepping the wave for like the next wave of enemies. So if you had 2 strong fighters back here that maybe clear out these mobs, no problem. Obviously, I'm struggling a little bit here because combat is kind of my main damage dealer for this.
You have my blades now.
But here, as these bigger enemies come in, this is where she can definitely shine and definitely start slowing things down. And she's doing 28,000 damage, and I want to stress, she is a 4-star champion doing 28,000 damage with these bombs set up. What's also nice is for some of these slow-moving enemies, right? You could be freezing them, which could be allowing things like your Theowin to do the rest of the damage needed to clear this content. I do want to stress, though, this is also a perfect example of the swarms are what she is very weak to. The more swarms there are, the more difficult it is going to be to show off of her power. So we're going to jump into Crystal Raid. Gear Raid 2 instead. Because this is another one of those stages where, because of the enemies being very predictable, we can make a 4-star eye look pretty powerful. Hey, chill out. Welcome to the stream, brother.
Are you ready?
The Ice Wolf stalks her prey.
So here we got very good RNG. We placed a bomb right in front of the target that we absolutely want. And then ironically enough, a second one showed up right behind it.
An end here escape the ordinary.
But yeah, here we're depending on the RNG of her throwing a second bomb here. And unfortunately, she is not throwing any bombs here, which is very unusual. I can let that wave through, that's no big deal.
Where am I needed? It is not wise to fight.
One big advantage to using Eye on a stage like this is that after she plants her seeds, we can remove her, and it actually does not matter here.
has gone.
Her bombs will stay out for us to give us a big advantage on something like Gear Raid 2.
Make it my redemption.
We are one.
Thirsty much?
But yeah, doing plenty of damage to some of these enemies as they come rolling in. Now here, unfortunately, my strategy normally is to have Wrath here on the side. There we go. One of them got pushed over into it. But normally I use some of my champions here on the sides to do damage on the inside. Now, again, I want to stress in that level, I is a 4-star champion at the moment, not 6-star. So if we've ranked her up and promoted her up to 6-star, there is a potential that as those golems were going through those crystal bombs, either A, they would just die because she would have like double the attack to compared to what she has. Because right now, our eye...
The Ice Wolf stalks her prey.
Our eye has around 7,000 damage total, right? I can just look at this. 7,353. So we know that this stat can double. So if this doubles, obviously this is going to get a lot higher as well. She would be doing tremendous damage. As we saw on the promotion raid when she was hitting for like 140,000 damage. She has that potential to hit for much higher damage values and have absolute crazy damage on her skills. And I want to stress, we have not given her any dust. She has 0 dust and she's putting out some obscene numbers already. The last thing I wanted to show off is here in the arena, and I'm just going to take the loss, unfortunately, because I want to show off the strategy, and I think it's very worth it. I need my mage. I need my girl. This is where also her ability to freeze targets in place, she could pair very well with champions like Osiren, but the specific combo that I want to show off is not with them. It is with somebody that would have a slow in their kit. So I typically do not use Theowen in this.
You have my blades now.
But this is a perfect example of Theowen can take a great advantage. Characters like Crake, who want their targets to be held perfectly still so that they can just be pumping out damage onto that singular square. This is where champions like and Mari, you could pair the two of them together. Mari and I could be specifically scary because as Mari is obliterating their defenses, when they would walk into the bombs of that would be absolutely crazy. But the specific thing I want to show off, and I don't think that this is necessarily the best use of it is just something of note that I want to point out that I can do. If you put her in a place like this, the enemy is going to be forcibly walking through this minefield that she plays out for them. And I am aware that I'm going to lose this match, so we're just going to kind of do some goofy stuff. I was hoping that he was going to throw that up here instead.
This world shall burn.
The other thing I realized is that, so with these guys, they're not going to take the same advantage of some of these ice bombs. So if I wanted them to take advantage, I can put him up here, and then as he's attacking them and also holding them in place, she could be refreshing the crystal bombs right on top of him.
You have my blades now.
I'm confused why that guy was able to walk through that second bomb. But this is something you could do with Ai. And again, I do not have her leveled up enough for this damage to be very meaningful.
Ready or not, this is ready or not.
This world shall burn.
More prey.
But this is where her constant freezing of enemies, you can be trapping them into this alleyway. So if I had a bunch of more of platform DPS, which is what I should have brought with me to show her off properly, we could have been peppering them going down that side and just absolutely obliterating them. Ooh, I'm actually closer to dropping out of Overlord than I thought. That's a shame.
The Weaver lies in wait.
So, that is our overall review on Ai. I hope this is helpful for you guys. She's a champion that I do like. I do think, though, that her usage is going to be more difficult than most other champions in the game. I do want to stress that there are levels, so like this is the campaign and normal. When we get to some of the slow-moving enemies that these levels present,
Later.
bring
I
you,
shall
get
be
rid of you.
waiting to collect
I
their
think that
souls.
Ai does have the potential to be
Calls for the
amazing,
tundras.
but it's just the fact that I do not have her ranked up fully. I do not have her fully promoted either.
Are you ready?
Well, I have her promoted to 6-star, but for these slower moving, heavily armored enemies that are very susceptible to...
The Ice Wolf
Here escape the ordinary.
My blades are always ready.
Ready or not, this is war.
This world shall burn.
An end to destruction.
Let me handle it.
You have my blades now.
Here escape the ordinary.
The Weaver lies in wait.
But yeah, her ability to place the traps and get them set up in a way that the enemy now has to walk through all of these spaces. This is definitely the moment where she shines. Definitely not on that first enemy or two while we were still trying to set up quite a bit. But here, as these enemies have to come barreling through, if my archer could have been reaching these spaces, he would be lighting her up like a Christmas tree, and it would feel fantastic. There was 45,000 damage, and then as Theowen sits here, continuously slows them down. This is where I can be just placing up more traps over and over again. But again, I want to stress that she is at 4-star. She's at 4-star doing content that is much, much higher above her, and she's still putting out usable damage, like very respectable damage. I will admit, though, I do think I should you 6-star her, and should you 6-star her immediately, only if she's your absolute favorite. Other than that, I would say that she is much better the further into the game you get. I don't foresee majority of players ever using her because she is so dependent on being proactive first, and her reactionary is near non-existent. So if you compare it to other games where you have like tempo, so games like Magic the Gathering, Hearthstone, League of Legends, where sometimes you have champions that are really, really good in the early game, Ai is kind of like that, where, okay, if you can set up your Teemo minefield setup, she can be absolutely brilliant. However, if the enemy is not forced to walk down that path, or that enemy can avoid that area, yes, she'll look less effective. One of the other problems that I had for Ai as well is that because I gave her the gear of my Comet, my other main damage dealer, I wasn't able to make her look nearly as good as she could. I was pairing her with other champions that were doing less damage, unfortunately. So that could be the other thing for you to consider, is that if you have a huge main damage dealer, like another legendary, like Morrigan, Razak, certain champions like that could really take advantage of something being frozen and taking a good chunk of their life off, Ai does have potential to her. However, is she as consistent as Wrath? No, and that's why Wrath is one of the most top-rated champions in the game. And Ai, unfortunately, her highest rating is in the EXP raid, which is absolutely not where I would ever put her first. In some of the arenas, I think is kind of one of her better places. And then, unfortunately, there's nothing for the campaign for her. So, unfortunately, some of these player ratings can be very misleading. I do think the overall 3.5 at best is kind of what explains her at the moment. And I say at the moment because I think as more players play the game and get more experienced with her, they will be able to make her look better or be able to realize, oh wow, she is good. But yes, she's a support champion, not a main damage dealer. And because of the style of her randomness, also can make her not feel the best to play with. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. So if you liked this video, make sure to hit that like button down below. If you really liked it, hit the subscribe button down below. That helps out a ton for my content. There will be definitely more Evaluate the Epics coming up. But of course, until that next time,